we are not all the same people. We can be urban, suburban, we can be HBCU, PWI. Like, we all have different perspectives. We can be East Coast, West Coast, have different ways we were brought up that influence who we are. And then also we have this increased conversation around intersectionality. We have these different intersections and ways that we identify ourselves.
Welcome to Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact. Each episode, we will cover legacy, hope, Black joy, funding sources, cultural shifts, equity, and so much more. We will provide inspiration and action while spreading some joy to a thriving community of Black business owners and leading thought leaders. Black Business Matters podcast is produced by the L3 Agency, a culturally sensitive influencer marketing and communications firm in Chicago, where relationships are our currency, passion is our profit maker, and people are our bottom line. I'm Larvetta Lofton, your host and founder of the L3 Agency. Welcome to another episode of Black Businesses Matter. I am super thrilled to have my sister. I call her literally my communication sister because that is who she is, on to our show. I have to say, I've been thinking about getting her on the show. And so we finally were able to nail her for this episode. And let me just say this, guys, whenever I get to bring people from the industry about what we do, it just does something to me. So I'm just going to say we're going to have fun today. You are in for a treat. Allow me to introduce you to Christina Steed. She is an award-winning marketing communication expert. Her experience is unique in the sense that she's worked on the business development, client relations, diversity and inclusion, and in external marketing communications. She is a consultant for global companies and agencies with agents and strategies, which is called ANS. A Black-owned, woman-led communications and cultural consultants. Wait, let me make sure I got that right. That was a lot of C's.
Consultancy.
Her experience really is broad in the sense of the brands that she's worked in, from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Nike to McDonald's to Poetry Foundation and several others. But I always open up on kind of who they are. But before we really get into kind of who Christina really is as an award-winning marketing communication expert, Christina, we like to really dig into, like, how did this come to be? As I'm sitting here reading your bio, and I really don't read bios because I know her, she's just dope. If you guys will look at, she's dope in every way. What was Christina like as a little girl?
Well, we will go there. So thank you for having me on the show, first of all. And yes, we are friends in industry and in life. Just your energy is great. So when I think back, I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I was enthralled and enraptured with the show LA Law, which y'all are probably too young to know that show. But Blair Underwood was on there. And I just was like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. But then when I got to high school, I started to really key in on the fact that I like to write. I'm a writer and a reader. Those are two things that really describe me and represent me. And even when I was in the second grade, I put out a class newspaper. But when I got to high school, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I think I may want to be a journalist. And so I did major in broadcast journalism at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And then went to University of Missouri at Columbia in their School of Journalism. Kind of after having experiences in TV, radio, I was reporting on the weekends when I was going to school at U of I. I was like, I kind of like being behind the scenes a little bit more. I kind of like being the puller of the strings, the puppeteer, so to speak, in terms of the story generation in that way. And so I made that switch over to public relations. And it was at a time when I was coming out of grad school, Larvetta, where 9/11 happened and none of these companies were hiring. They were actually cutting staff because companies weren't spending a lot on marketing. They weren't spending a lot on hiring people in the communications field. As I think about that time, I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I just was beating the pavement, going to different job fairs. They'd see me show up in the same suit and be like, didn't we see you at the other job fair? I'm like, you got a job this time? So I just kept it pushing, kept it moving. And eventually I was able to connect, when you talk about relationships, connect with a CEO of a manufacturing company who was a graduate of the University of Missouri as well. I talked to him about creating a public relations department within his marketing department at the manufacturing company. Had a great conversation and was hired. So that's kind of how I got my first start in this industry. But no, I didn't even think about it. When I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer.
And I think I crack up, Christina, because every time I sit down and talk to industry leaders, and they'll say, like, I thought they come from a nurse to a lawyer. And I laugh because that was like me, because I couldn't articulate what I wanted to do. So I would say lawyer. So I'm just laughing because I was like, Christina, that was me. I'm still a LA law. Like, I still watch those law shows. I'm just laughing. I was like, that's why we're so connected, because we've got this kind of innermost debate. I think it's an innermost ability to kind of debate and communicate. I think it's some color in it, because when I see someone, when they do the closing remarks, I'm so fascinated by that, because it's like creating this whole picture. So I just laughed that that was yours. So I'm over here hand clapping to myself. But Christina, we've been talking about relationships all this entire season, everything from personal to business and everything in between. And so, really, for you as a communications expert and a person who really is very well connected and certainly involved in culture, and we'll talk about your show, really talking about it from the standpoint of personal to business relationships, because ultimately, I think we met personally through Sheila. You had just written a book.
Working on a book, but Sheila was, I think, hosting a book, somebody's book launch.
And so we got together, just chit chat, realize, and of course, we love Sheila. Sheila's been on the show too. And so Sheila's that connector and connecting amazing people together. And so she was like, oh, you guys should know each other. And we sit over here like, yeah, we should. And so from that point on, we then started to run into the same rooms. And one thing I want people to know that I love most about you, Christina, and I want to talk that relationship, was that when we see each other in rooms where we might be going after business, we just loved each other. We dapped each other. We're like, hey, girl, how's it going? In that environment, it's not always that way. And that's what I loved most about our relationship, was that when we were in rooms, and I don't really like to call it opposing because it really ain't opposing, but we're in rooms where we both are going after business. We're just there to really support and dap each other up. And so I want to talk about, is that something for you was easy to do? Did you learn how to do that? How were your relationships, were your personal relations really helping you to really become that person that was like, that's my sister, like we good?
I think for me, I will share, when I was coming up, that was not modeled for me. In fact, I think what was modeled for me was women are always in competition with each other. You can't trust other women. You can't be friends with other women because they're sneaky and this and that. And so that was the model. That was what I saw in my life. Not that it was my experience, but I saw this with my mother and her friends and other things. And so for me, I made a conscious decision. That's not how I want to be. That's not how I want to live my life. Like, I want peace, and I see the beauty in every woman that I come in contact with. And I've had friends throughout my life, good networks of friends. I've had a girlfriend that I've known since high school. We're in totally different industries, but we always like support each other and send each other leads. And then I've met new friends. That song, No New Friends, like, that is such crap, because when you meet new people, that is just yet another extension of your network and another opportunity to be in fellowship with someone, whether it's personal or professional, that you can learn from. So for me, whenever we saw each other, again, your energy is just so good, where it's like, hey, if we might be competing for the same business, but there's enough out here for all of us to eat. So I don't need to look you up and down crazy, or not be cool with you, or not send you leads, or none of that. Like, I want us all to win, because we all deserve to win. So that's been my thing. So my thing that I say when I mentor young people and talk to other people about mentorship is, I'm going to give what I didn't get. at every moment. If someone wants to have a coffee, maybe when I was coming up, I didn't have mentors who wanted to sit down and have coffee with me. I'm going to sit down and have coffee with someone, either whether they're my peer or one of the students I teach or a young person in the industry, because I know that that can be so very helpful. So that's kind of how I've lived my life with it.
Give what I didn't get. I love that. As I sit here and say the same thing, like I felt like I didn't or I heard it. I love when I get to talk to industry leaders in this place and really be able to shed light on how women can be relational and that we can support each other. And the thing that you also say is, it's so much out here for us all to win, right? There's no way. I'll share something with you. I was listening to something, I don't know what it was, but something on TV. And instead of looking at like winning and losing, but winning and learning. Because don't we learn from the not so good moments? I mean, we really learn from those.
We learn from them and they make us who we are. In the moment, it might not feel good, but it makes us who we are.
I have to be reminded of that. So, when you think of relationships, and we're going to talk about relationships in this space of D&I, because you certainly are a huge contributor in that space and making sure that there is diversity, that there is equity, that there is inclusivity. We hear this word, and as a journalist, you've experienced it with shaping stories. How important is relationships in this discussion around D&I?
So I think relationships are critically important because it is how we establish authenticity. It is how we establish believability and people really, especially within company settings, believing what leaders are saying about their DE&I and B, we'll put the belonging on there, commitments to their employees, to their key stakeholders, and to their communities. I would even say, when you mentioned about culture, I am a student of culture. I study culture. I teach culture at the collegiate level. I have a show about culture. And the way we create culture and creating cultures that are heavy on inclusion as well as equity, making sure people feel that they have access to opportunities, is through building relationships. And for Black and Brown communities, relationships are important. You cannot just be transactional. We have all figured out how to code switch and navigate certain spaces where we are not in the majority. But I think a lot of that during the pandemic has kind of fallen down. That curtain has come down, and people want to bring their whole selves to work and they want to feel safe, that they're in a good place to be able to do that. And that is what, under DEIB, a lot of the work that I do at companies is to help to facilitate that. Additionally, it is pulling down silos within companies and creating relationships across different departments. You would be surprised, and you know this, working in the industry, how marketing might not talk to the DE&I team. They might not talk to the advertising team or the paid media team or the earned media team or the CorpCom team. And so there's not even relationships within these companies. And so things are being done disjointed and not all together. We see that as consumers when it hits the market, things feel disjointed. So relationships continue to be important in this space to just really, again, establish authenticity, relevance, and respect as it relates to doing this work.
It's so disappointing because that is so true in these large corporations. You're like, oh, we don't even know what they do. It's always amazing to me in these big companies, large companies, enterprise companies, there is no relationship inside of the organization. So you can have an organization where an outsider could say, oh, yeah, she was working on this and he was working on this. You guys work in the same building. And it happens so much that when you said it, I was almost like, that has become the norm. Because when you said, I was like, yes, it happens so much. And maybe we've normalized it to a certain degree, which is why this conversation of D&I and B, and I love it, on the place of belonging, because it's so necessary. And I want to just kind of discuss on this space of like diversity and thought. So for us, we talk about like the idea of making sure that we are different in how we see things, and that I view one thing, you might view another. Even in the space of companies, while we all might be Black and brown, we still have very different thoughts and opinions about a particular product, brand, etc. We can still support it, but I might support it because it supports pets and I'm a pet lover. Someone else might say, I support it because they recently supported my friend's school's birthday party or something like that. Everybody has a different thought on why they're supporting that brand. When do we bring that to the table so that that allows for us to create that authenticity and that difference? Christina, we're Black girls, but you might say, I like chai latte and you like coffee. But we both are Black girls who still love what we love, but we're different in the way that we show up. And so I think that whole idea of being monolithic, how has that for you as a professor? How has that helped you in the space that you are as you're relating to mentoring? That whole idea of diversity in thought. Because I think in the classroom, you see that more and it's accepted.
We are not all the same people. We can be urban, suburban, we can be HBCU, PWI. Like we all have different perspectives. We can be East Coast, West Coast, have different ways we were brought up that influence who we are. And then also we have this increased conversation around intersectionality. We have these different intersections and ways that we identify ourselves. We are both Black, we are women, but we have different ways. Again, other people have different ways of identifying themselves, whether it's not on the binary. So again, that diversity of thought comes into play with lived personal experiences that people bring to approach to doing something. Now, that does not negate doing really good research and pulling in consumer insights. And sometimes, and from those insights, we're able to develop themes or look at different, like the Black segment through a value prism. So we know a good majority of the segment is very much faith-based and into spirituality, but not all of us. There's a big move away from the church as the spiritual base for young people in particular. So there are so many different nuances within the segment. And again, just driving home the point that we're not a monolith. And that's not just for the Black community, that's for Hispanic and Latino, Latinx community, that is for Asian community as well. But for us, because we are mostly seen as speaking English across the board, we kind of get looked at as, oh, they're all the same and have the same interests and likes, and we do not. And I think it's way more accepted now as we look at social media to see the different nuances, to see the different niche audiences in the Black community. You have people who are interested in Black skateboarders, Black skiers, Black writers, folks who are into cosplay. And what that allows us to do in our industries, Arvetta, is to storytell in very different ways, to create campaigns that can really resonate with these fan bases of either brands or lifestyles or things like that. So we're not telling the same story over and over again. Yes, basketball is important, but basketball is not life for everybody. So there are many ways to tell stories when you're including a Black audience and a Black lens.
I now want to talk about the show, Christina. I'm so excited about your new show, merely because one is watching you as a friend and seeing you. Because crazy enough, I used to watch, it was the podcast, was it the first over 40?
Yeah, my first over 40 podcast. Yeah.
I would watch that and I was like, oh my gosh, look at Christina. Like, she's great. So I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh. And so just to see you able to launch this show, I'm like, for the culture, first of all, one is I was yes, because now I'm about to say this is that this idea of like Generation X doesn't exist. We still do. We still hot. We not old to be able to launch this new TV show where, don't get me wrong, for all those that are listening, I love my young people. I love my young staff. It's not this, but I noticed that Gen X has becoming very like this not being seen. And I'm like, hold up, that we're the larger segment of like educated folks. Like we're the segment that has more disposable income. I'm like,
All of the things.
I'm like, wait. So let me say this on that side, for me, on this side as your cheerleader, that's what I was cheering for. Like literally like opening the door for Generation X to be able to walk a path where ultimately at one point was not always available. And so to be able to do that, I want to talk about for the culture for you on Can TV. I'm super excited. So tell me about this. How did that come to be for the culture?
It came to be through relationships. So, tying back to the earlier theme, I am a student of culture. I love culture, and I've taught culture and cultural competency class at DePaul University at the graduate level for 3 years. The relationship part was the executive director of CAN TV was a friend and an industry contact who I had known in the nonprofit space. And when he assumed the ED role at CAN TV, he said, "Well, I'm thinking about launching some signature programming. Would love to have you pitch us something because you study culture." And so I pitched a show synopsis, and we are here with a signature. My program is one of the signature programs in the lineup at CAN TV. And the show for the culture is where I delve into these different topics. I have different guests on talking about stuff that cover issues and narratives that are distinctive to Chicagoland. So anything in arts, entertainment, pop culture, trending news, diversity, equity, inclusion, women's issues, businesses, and just giving a different narrative to Chicago. I think we live in a dope city, and there's a lot of people who are doing great stuff behind the scenes that we don't platform. And here is a place where we can do some platforming of some people in Chicago. And so that's what I've been doing.
So tell us so that we can tell the listeners, how often does it air? How can they become a guest?
Absolutely, all of the things. So it airs every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV 19 if you're in Chicago, and it streams online at cantv.org. So my family who's around the world is able to look at it online as well. And people who would like to suggest folks for shows, you can reach out to me at CC Steed on Twitter, or you can visit my website, ChristinaSteed.com, and connect with me. We're in the first season right now, and we'll start shooting the second season early next year. And I'll be looking for new guests for the new season. So yeah, definitely reach out.
I just got to say this because, I just love both you and Munson. How's Munson doing?
So my husband, Munson Steed, who's the CEO and publisher of Rolling Out, he is great. He and I have a segment on my show where we kind of do a he said, she said about a current topic. So
I saw it, Christina, and I thought that's why I was like, I got to bring Mustin to the party. I love the banter. I love it. And so I'm glad that you plugged Rolling Out because we love Rolling Out to be able to be media partners to shape stories, tell stories, highlight stories, and for him to be able to get sponsorship, to be able to keep it because they're online. Rolling Out is strictly online, no more paper, right? Is it?
no, they still print. Yeah, you got to cover all of the traditional and non-traditional new media, all of it. So they're still in print as well as online at rollingout.com. Streaming service is launching soon, and Rolling Out has diversified into a lot of different events that are held, hybrid events. So yeah, check them out.
So we've been talking about relationships. And so I just had to bring in the personal relationship with her husband because that is also very important when we're building out businesses and making sure that we have the right personal relationships too. And personal in the standpoint of a spouse. And so I just wanted to point that out because of that being a place of being relational. And I think that is also important. You have that. So, we asked this question, Christina, to every guest. I could go on and on with you because I just love to sit with you and be able to talk about stories and shaping stories. But we do ask this question, why do Black businesses matter?
Having been married 11 years to a Black business owner, having worked for a Black business owner, having done numerous partnerships with companies and Black entrepreneurs, Black businesses matter because I think for two very, very important reasons right now in our moment in history, if we want to make it that. For equity's sake, that we have a seat at the table to help create wealth opportunities, create revenue opportunities, and be able to live our lives fully by being able to have some sense of leadership and control over how we are making our money. The other part is Black consumers in partnership with Black business owners, because we have, like you said, we've talked about buying power, the power of the Black dollar, how we are receipt shareholders as consumers. And we have the power to use our shareholdership with our pocketbooks to support Black businesses, to create more entrepreneurs. I think the younger generation, they want a job and they want to be at a company that their values are in alignment with their own personal values. But they also want to be able to have more control and more freedom in their work, how they make their money, than a Gen X and Boomer. And the opportunities for having a job with pensions are few and far between. So they're just looking at more ways to be able to create wealth. And so Black businesses matter for, I think, those very big reasons. And I am very excited about the support of Black businesses and just having proximity, being married to someone who runs a business, having worked for someone else who ran a business, and running my own consultancy now. When we get together as Black people and are working together, we are so very powerful. And this is not new. And I will say this, when people talk about Black businesses and our future or how we need to build, it is often brought up how the Jewish community has done that. And they have done great work in terms of the building of businesses in their community. But we have also, and we just need to know our history around right after Reconstruction, there were people who were enslaved, who didn't have the reading and the education levels that we have access to today, who built businesses, who built Black Wall Street, who built, and these things were not just in Tulsa, they were all over this country. And so I think we need to just remember our own history and tap into that when we're thinking about how we're going to build Black businesses in the future.
Thank you so much, Christina, for that, because I do think we do talk about the Jewish community and how, have been very successful. I'm so glad that you brought that up because every time I ask that question, I'm always empowered and I get chills from what people say on why Black businesses matter, which is why this podcast was developed. And because we don't understand or some oftentimes know the history behind it. And I say that because I have a good friend of mine. Her father built a very solid real estate company and he literally could not read or write. He could only read up until third grade. He was smart enough to be able to bring smart people to the table, to be able to help him. And then eventually he went back to school, but very successful real estate developer, very successful. As soon as you said it, it made me think of him because he used to always say, education is our tool, but understand that if you have smart people and really good, he said it. I had great relationships with the banks. Like he was just a smooth dude. And he's like, they knew me. And they would be like, oh, what you coming in? He was like, yeah, I'm working on something. I need you to give me some money. And that's how he talked. For lack of better, he was like the pimp, like of the community. In it, though, from a culture standpoint, the banks respected him. And so he had created that, but he could not read past the third grade level, literally. And my girlfriend would say, didn't know at the time, because my father, that he would pretend like he was reading, but he wasn't. But all along, they had food on the table. Never did they have to want for anything. So for her, it was just more so that, but he always had smart people. And they didn't all look like him. Some did, some didn't. But he was the guy, he was the pimp in the neighborhood. And I say pimp in such a good way.
I get what you mean. And I would even say a different level of genius. Because what we understand genius or smarts or education to be today, reading, writing, very, very important. But there are people who have a genius, who have a spark, who have an energy, who have a favor on their life, that they are able to do things that are beyond our comprehension with a skill set that we may think is limited.
For some of us, we just got favor. And when we have God's favor in our lives, really that relationship is like, oh, I really know you. So when we go in rooms, it's like, no, I know you. Oh, you do? Okay. All right. Well, nice to meet you because of the favor that's on your life. And so, Christina, as we close this episode, we do ask this question to every guest. What brings you joy?
Oh my gosh. So right now it's the autumn season and autumn brings me joy in terms of seeing this is a time of change. We see the colors on the trees change. I'm able to take walks outside and be close to nature with the crisp air. That brings me joy. Going to farmers markets Saturday mornings with my husband brings me joy. Curling up with a great book and reading it and finishing it. And I'm getting ready in a little while to hang out with some friends and eat some good food. And so eating good food brings me joy.
And let me tell you, during the pandemic, which is why I added this to this podcast, Christina, was because as I was suffering, because, I'm an extrovert, pandemics was struggle. We were struggling. And so I had to find things that brought me joy in just like the little things. And so I would purchase things and wait for it to arrive just so I can open up a box and it was just the weirdest. And I would order like corny stuff. It would just be stuff that it was candles. It was just stuff that I was excited to get the doorbell. I was that girl because it was just seeing a person coming, arriving, dropping off her box. I was struggling. So
That makes sense to me though, Larvetta. That makes sense to me.
the world needs to understand that we had a guest on, Christina, once. She talked about Black joy, how we hadn't had permission to really spread our Black joy. And so I thought it was important on the podcast to really make sure the leaders that we had, because we've had Black and brown and everything else in between, we believe in that, and asking people what brings them joy. And what I find is that, Christina, while we've had someone that was from a different culture, we were similar in what we enjoy from a joy standpoint. Yeah, I grew up this way, you grew up this way. No, I'm not Black, you're not. But we found that we had similar joys. And I found that that's something that we don't get a chance to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that question. It made me joyful answering it.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted. Thank you so much, Christina. As we close, I just want to make sure for people, your website, if you can share that again, your website, just so that folks can know. Christina Steed, and that is Steed for everybody, ChristinaSteed.com. Your Instagram handle, I know you have an Instagram handle. What's your Instagram handle?
Yeah, my IG is Christina the Steed, and then my Twitter is at CC Steed.
Got it. And Twitter is CC Steed. And then, of course, you can catch Christina on cantv.org for the culture. It airs every Tuesday at 7 p.m. So I'm just going to tell everybody that's listening, get your phones out and send yourself a reminder and just sit with it. Because as Christina mentioned, sometimes we say, it's all this negativity that's going on in our city for those of us that are listening out of Chicago, that we can actually sit down and really be able to really rediscover our city. Those that are not in Chicago, you should just listen to it so that when you come here, a lot of times I feel like when people come to Chicago, well, where do I go? I'm like, the same way y'all talk about New York. Like, stop trying to, where? I mean, it's just not safe on the South Side. I'm like, no, stop.
Don't feed into that trope. Don't believe it. Yeah.
Because where are you going, Christina? You're going to hang out with friends and have good food. Like, that's one thing that we know for sure Chicago gives us is great food. So I just want to say thank you, my sister, my friend, my supporter, my collaborator, and all of that. I thank you for coming on to the show. I'm so glad that we were able to get you on because we could talk about this for hours, literally.
Likewise. Thank you, Larvetta. This was fun.
I just want to say as we close, thank you guys for listening to another episode of Black Businesses Matter. Thank you for joining us this week on Black Businesses Matter podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen so you will never miss a show. You can also follow us on social media at the L3 Agency and at Larvetta Speaks. If you love the show, leave a rating so that we can continue to bring you impactful episodes. You can also take the pledge and order our merch at our website at thell3agency.com. THEL3agency.com. Thanks for listening and see you next week.